Have you ever seen a ghost? How about hearing footsteps in an empty room, or maybe even feeling icy fingers trailing down your arm? Well, today I'm going to share with you a story of one Egyptian actor who can't escape the eerie presence haunting his home. Welcome back to the channel. Today's episode is called Ghost of Abou Aouf's Villa. It's part 2 of our series Celebrity Hauntings, so make sure to like and subscribe for more. Our story begins with the famed Egyptian actor Abou Aouf. The veteran actor has been in the industry since the 60s and starred in some of the biggest Egyptian hits. He also owns one of the most extravagant homes in Cairo. However, despite its opulence, it comes with a very unfortunate caveat. The entire staff refuses to work at night. The reason? There is a ghost. Legend has it that when the sun goes down, a mysterious figure haunts the halls of the upper floor. And it's not just any apparition. According to the staff, it's the ghost of a tall man with long white hair who carries a lantern. And as he walks, he flickers the light on and off. At first, they thought it was just a prank by one of the other staff members. But after the second or third night, they realized that this was something else entirely. This goes on every single night, and we can only imagine how spooky it must be. One can only wonder, does Mr. Aouf know about this ghastly spectre that's haunting his home? And if so, does he dare step foot upstairs after sunset? The answer, much to our surprise, is yes. In fact, he not only stays in the house, but he also sleeps in the same bedroom every night. Every night he's haunted by the ghost of this tall man holding a lantern. But why? Why does he continue to stay in that room? What makes him brave enough to do so? Perhaps it's because he doesn't believe in ghosts, or maybe he simply has no other place to go. Or perhaps it's because he's hoping that one day he might catch the ghost in the act. After all, it's not every day that one can come face to face with a spectre from another world. Well, whatever his reasoning may be, one thing is certain: it's not easy sleeping with the ghosts. Let us know in the comments below what you would do in this situation. Would you move out immediately, or would you try to make the best of it? Let us know your thoughts. But for now, let's get back to our story. After several nights of hearing footsteps above him, Mr. Aouf decided to investigate. With flashlight in hand, he went up the stairs to the source of the sound. But what he found left him stunned. The apparition was nowhere to be found. In fact, the entire house was empty. No ghosts, no footsteps, just an eerie silence. Days turned into weeks, and the ghost became a regular nightly occurrence. Even the dogs would start barking furiously at the top of the stairs, as if alerting their master to an intruder. But again, when Mr. Aouf investigated, he could never find anyone there. Even the bravest of his family members refused to enter the upper floor after sunset, leaving it abandoned and vacant. For years, everyone avoided the upper floor, whispering about the ghost and warning others to stay away. It wasn't until one fateful night that the ghost finally made its presence known. One evening, the Aouf family had guests over, and as the night wore on, they decided to head upstairs for some fresh air. Everyone except for one brave soul who stayed behind on the ground floor. Suddenly, they heard a blood-curdling scream from upstairs, followed by an ominous crash. Startled, the downstairs resident rushed to see what had happened. He found the rest of the party huddled together on the stairs, pale with fright. They explained what had happened and begged him to come see for himself. Together they ascended the stairs slowly, their eyes wide with anticipation. Then they saw it. An old wooden chest lying on the floor, splintered and broken. Beside it stood a tall, shadowy figure with long white hair and a flickering lantern. For a moment, time stood still. The brave resident could only stare in disbelief as the apparition approached them. It seemed to glide through the air, its form shifting and changing with each step. Then suddenly, it vanished. Just like that, the ghost was gone. The resident and his friends stood there dumbfounded, unable to comprehend what they had just seen. But the ghost wasn't done with them yet. As they stood there frozen in fear, they felt a cold breeze sweep over them. It sent shivers down their spines, and the hair on their arms stood on end. Then they heard footsteps approaching them. Slow, deliberate footsteps coming closer and closer. They turned around and saw the tall figure standing in front of them. It was the ghost from the chest. It beckoned with a finger for them to follow, and without thinking twice, they did. They trailed the ghost down the hallway, their hearts pounding in their chests. The ghost stopped in front of a door and knocked 3 times. Then it turned around and disappeared. The resident hesitated for a moment, then reached out and opened the door. Inside was a small, dark room. The resident stepped inside and gasped. In the corner was a rocking chair, gently swaying back and forth as if someone had just gotten up from it, and next to it lay an old, dusty trunk. The resident approached the trunk cautiously and lifted the lid. Inside were stacks of yellowed letters tied with faded ribbons. As he reached for one of the letters, he felt a cold finger brush against his arm. He jumped back in surprise and dropped the letter. He stared at the spot where the finger had touched him and gasped. Right in front of him, a translucent hand slowly emerged from the chest, followed by a ghostly white face. The resident screamed and stumbled backward, knocking over the trunk. The ghost vanished, leaving him alone in the dark room. Shaken and frightened, he fled the room and raced down the stairs. Outside, he collapsed onto the grass, gasping for breath. His friends rushed to his side, their faces etched with concern. They asked what had happened, but he could only shake his head, too frightened to speak. They helped him back to his feet and led him back to the house. Once inside, they huddled together, trying to calm their racing hearts. They discussed what had happened, their voices hushed and fearful. Then, as if on cue, a loud crash echoed from above them. They all jumped and stared at the staircase leading to the upper floor. For a moment, they stood frozen with fear, unsure of what to do next. Finally, one of them spoke up and suggested they should investigate. With trembling hands, they reached for the lights and flicked them on. But as they turned the corner, they found nothing. There was no sign of any disturbance, no indication that anything had fallen. They searched the room, but found nothing out of the ordinary. And yet, the noise they had heard was unmistakable. Suddenly, one of them noticed a portrait hanging crookedly on the wall. It was a picture of an old man with long white hair. As they stared at the portrait, the hair in the painting seemed to shift and move. Then, right before their eyes, the man stepped out of the frame and floated toward them. He raised a finger and pointed toward the stairs. Then, with a final wave, he vanished. They watched in amazement as the portrait righted itself on the wall. Was it a trick of the light, a hallucination brought on by fear? Or were they truly witnessing a supernatural event? The men were torn between disbelief and fascination. Unable to explain what they had seen, they decided to heed the ghost's warning and steer clear of the stairs. They didn't want to provoke whatever spirit lurked above. And so they retreated to the safety of the ground floor, leaving the upper floor undisturbed. Now, let me ask you this. Would you dare spend a night in a haunted house, even if it meant getting a glimpse of the ghost? Let us know in the comments below. That night, the residents of the house were shaken but intrigued. They decided to stay in the house and try to contact the ghost. They placed a séance circle in the center of the room and began chanting and calling out to the spirit. Suddenly, the temperature in the room dropped dramatically. The hairs on their arms stood on end, and the lights flickered ominously. Then they heard footsteps approaching them. Slowly, a translucent figure began to emerge from the shadows. It was the tall man from the portrait. He walked toward the séance circle and stood before them. His eyes were hollow and his expression sad. Then he began to speak. His voice was a low whisper, yet somehow they could hear him clearly. He told them that he was the former owner of the house and that he had died upstairs many years ago. He explained that he had no ill will toward the living and that he only wished to communicate with them. He revealed that he had been trapped in the house for decades and that he longed to be free. The residents were stunned. They had never witnessed anything like this before, but they felt compassion for the ghost and wanted to help him. They asked if there was anything they could do to ease his suffering and set him free. The ghost looked at them gratefully and said that all he needed was for someone to touch him. He explained that he had been invisible and intangible for so long that he had forgotten what it felt like to be human. The residents were taken aback, but one of them stepped forward. He closed his eyes and reached out a hand toward the ghost. As his fingers touched the apparition, a surge of energy coursed through him. The ghost's form began to glow, and he cried out in joy. He thanked the resident and told him that he was finally free. With that, the ghost vanished, and the room filled with a bright white light. When the light subsided, the residents looked around in amazement. The ghost was gone, and with him, the eerie presence that had haunted the house for decades. The residents were overjoyed. They had not only made contact with a ghost, but they had also helped him find peace. From that day forward, the house was filled with laughter and joy once again. The residents never forgot their encounter with the ghost, but it gave them a new appreciation for the power of compassion and the importance of helping those in need, even if they were dead. Even the famous aren't safe from Egypt's ghosts. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out the next video in our series, Celebrity Hauntings. See you next time.